Hey, what's going on, guys? Kalamazi here, and today a new PTR build hit, well, PTR servers. I wasn't expecting one with TBC pre-patch supposedly launching today, although it's probably going to be tomorrow at this point because there's been some unfortunate pushbacks. Regardless, Destro buffed, Affliction nerfed pretty substantially, and basically all the legendaries, I guess except for the Kyrian one, were buffed today for Warlock as well. The 9.1 one wasn't, it was tuned, but let's be real here. We knew that the 50% haste per target hit by Soul Rot was never going to go live, and it was a placeholder. So today I want to talk to you guys about the legendary buffs, nerfs, changes, however you want to word it, the Destro buffs, the Aff nerfs, what it means, and everything else moving forward. Now, if you're interested in acquiring any weak ORS profiles or add-ons you see here, you can get them all for free off my Twitch. If you want to swing by, hang out, feel free to do so. Also want to give a shout out to all my patrons. Thank you so much for all the support, guys. Heads up, the 9.1 Sanctum of Domination Warlock spreadsheet is indeed now live. The tier 3 Felguard rank of my Patreon or higher does indeed get early access to that. With all that being said, let's get into the video, starting off with the legendary changes. So the coolest way to go about showing you guys these legendaries would honestly be able to be playing with them, but unfortunately we can't do that because I know the Warlock legendaries and I believe the Hunter legendaries that came out today, or buff, nerf, whatever happened with them today, actually give you a shaman legendary ability whenever you craft them. So they're in game, but none of them actually work. However, the tuning has been done, some things have been buffed and nerfed. Let's talk about the biggest change, Decaying Soul Satchel. Each target affected by your Soul Rot increases your haste and crit by 5% for 8 seconds. So two things have changed here. Number one, this is not 50% like it said. There's no way in the world it's going to last. I told you guys, it's either a placeholder or it wasn't data mined properly, because it doesn't even make sense. Number one, Soul Rot can hit 4 targets, so what, you're gonna have 200% haste and 200% crit? Doesn't make any sense. I assumed it was going to be 5% or 2.5%, something along those lines. Now, we mentioned before that at 5% in single target, this is not a crazy legendary. It's okay, the effect is fine. It might rival synergy in certain settings. We don't get synergy procs and things, but the power of this legendary, I think, lies in AoE and in Mythic Plus, because keep in mind, power infusion is essentially the same thing, just for 20 seconds and not 8. But you also get 20% crit with this effect, and you can control this effect, and it also is on a 1-minute cooldown, not a 2-minute, which I believe power infusion is, I'm pretty sure. This could be really powerful in Mythic Plus. You might have to change your timing of your Soul Rot a little bit with Destro or with Demo, because Tyrant setup, it's totally doable. 20% crit and 20% haste for your every single Tyrant per Demo. Well, every other, I guess, technically, because it's not Wilfred's, but very strong. Destro loves haste, loves crit, works well with your Havoc windows. Affliction works with every single Rapture window if you're holding your PS for 1-minute Rapture windows and all that, and it lines up with every other Dark Glare, because Dark Color is now baseline. This effect could be really strong in Mythic Plus. Also, if you're playing Affliction with the Sow the Seeds build and you're looking to spam multiple seeds at once, well, you know, put your agonies up, get your UA rolling, pop the seed, pop your Soul Rot, and just spam 20% haste on top of what 20 you already have. 50% haste, give or take. It's gonna be pretty solid, man. So I'm really excited for Decaying Soul Satchel and Plus and AoE. Not incredibly excited in single target, but it's not dead in single target. It's not like the Implosion legendary for Demo where it has very little value there. It's still useful when it comes to that. If there's an ad on the boss as well, pretty solid. Pull a trash back into the boss, you're good to go. Second legendary that got changed today, Languishing Soul Detritus. I think I learned this word last time, might have pronounced it incorrectly. This was actually not changed. I lied to you. I thought this was the actual Necrolord one. This is the Kyrian one. Same thing as before, Scouring Tide, gain 100% increased movement speed and 40% crit. This legendary is in a weird spot. Targets need to die. You have to have mobs dying to get this effect. It can be very strong. 40% increased crit chance for 8 seconds. Destro loves that. Havoc window, Chaos Bolt damage. Chaos Bolt always critting, scaling with crit. Really strong. But the mob has to die, and that's for every spec. So in Patchwork, this is 100% dead. On a single target boss, this legendary is dead. It's like you're not wearing one. So I would like to see this change, like maybe something along the lines of like when it generates soul shards, you get the effect. If the cooldowns reset, like you cast it again, maybe you get half the effect. It'd be cool. But I never am a fan of legendaries or effects that are like this, like really good or just dead. I'm never a fan of them. So yeah, Only one that didn't change was this one today. Now, the Necrolord one, Shard of Annihilation. Decimating Bolt also increases the critical strike chance, or I guess, the critical strike chance by 100% and critical strike damage by 50% for Demon Bolt. This is probably going to be reworded because it's a little awkward. This works for Demon Bolt, Incinerate, Shadow Bolt, and Drain Soul for Affliction. This is a very large change from last time because I believe it was like a 15% chance to increase crit, something like that. It's 100%. It increases the critical strike chance by 100% and critical strike damage by 50%. So for Demonology, Demon Bolt is it's a portion of our damage. I'm not incredibly excited for it. The strengths of this legendary, though, I would say would lie more in Affliction, but number one, we'll get to that in a little while. The Shadow Bolt Conduit was nerfed into the ground today. Destruction might want this effect because keep in mind, Decimating Bolt increases Incinerate's damage. This would also increase the critical strike chance of Incinerate and damage of Incinerate, and also Chaos Bolt crit chance, Chaos Bolt crit scaling. You'd have some pretty big damage windows with this effect active because, I mean, even with it not affecting Chaos Bolt, you're going to have big Incinerates in that Roaring Blaze window. And outside of that, your bolts are still critting in the first place. This looks really strong, potentially, for Necrolords playing Destro. But once again, you're playing Necrolord Destro. And Night Phase also very close. And Night Phase has a decent option as well when it comes to Decaying Soul Satchel, with also having Spread Cleave, Soul Shape, and those things. So I have to keep an eye on this, but this is a pretty powerful effect. If it ends up being worthwhile, I'm down to play it. Affliction, once again, the Drain Soul Shadow Bolt changes. We'll get to that in a little while today. Withering Bolt was nerfed. Not a huge fan of it. It's solid, but having all this damage tied to your Decimating Bolt, I feel if the Conduit hadn't been nerfed today, Malefic Wrath would still be better. Final effect here, Contain Perpetual Explosion. This was also buffed today. This is the Venthyr legendary. Impending Catastrophe's final explosion damage increased by 75% plus 15% for each enemy target hit on its way to its final target. This was 50% baseline and 10% for each enemy hit the last PTR build, or when it was data mined. It's now 75 and 15. This effect is really cool, but once again, 8 million times 0 is still 0. If the effect doesn't do any damage, it's still 0%. It's sort of funny to me how cool Venthyr is thematically with IC, with their effects and stuff, and even this legendary. Like, it looks really cool. And this is the only legendary I feel that has, like, this sort of does with like Havoc windows. But this effect here is both good in a single target, if they buff the explosion damage of IC, and could also be good in AoE because of multiple targets that it travels through. I think this legendary once again has the most potential if the ability is actually buffed to do damage. But once again, 8 million times 0 is still 0. They can make this legendary deal 8,000% increased damage, but if IC's explosion damage still does 0.2% of your damage in single target, doesn't make much of a difference. I'm excited for this effect, but I don't think in its current form right now, barring substantial buffs to IC and Venthyr, it's very good. Meaning it's not very good. TLDR, Satchel, pretty solid in AoE. Not the best single target, but we'll feel it out. Shard could be good for Destro, depending on where things land scaling-wise with Roaring Blaze, Incinerate, and just the final effects of this. Not a huge fan of this, because once again, it's completely dead in patchwork fights, and Contained could be good if they end up buffing Venthyr IC, but at this point, I feel like it's half just a lost cause. So getting into the Affliction nerfs today, number one, I'm going to say I've seen this in multiple areas saying they removed this modifier, and then I've seen it in certain areas saying they didn't. This is also not mentioned in the official patch notes today, so I think it might have been data mined improperly. I don't think they nerfed Agony today, but they might have. I'm not sure. It's hard to confirm this because comparing Agony damage on PTR and retail is not easy to do. I don't think it's been nerfed. But the big thing today, Withering Bolt has been nerfed again. Let's be honest here. I mentioned it before. If you didn't think Withering Bolt wasn't getting nerfed again, I don't know what world you live in. Like, it's unfortunate, but when Shadow Bolt's still dealing 28 to 30% of your damage after multiple nerfs, you know. But they hit it pretty hard here. Withering Bolt, Drain Soul deals 5% increased damage per damage return effect you have on your target. Shadow Bolt 10%. So they cut this thing. They cut this thing by, they nerfed it by a lot. Now at 226, the current rank is 15 and 8% here. These are just not data mined properly, I would assume. It's going to go 22, 23, 24, and then 12, 13, 14 for Shadow Bolt here. Once again, Drain Soul does less, like gets less of an amplification because of Execute and it being Drain Soul. Shadow Bolt gets more. In game, 226 eye level, looking at the actual conduit here, well, it's 16% increased damage to Shadow Bolt. The build we have been playing, single target base for Affliction, is essentially this. Playing Malefic Wrath, we have Nightfall, Siphon Life, PS, Haunt. We were playing Shadow's Embrace, but with all the nerfs to Shadow Bolt and the modifiers and everything, I think Haunt might end up being a little better at this point because more Shadow Bolt casts aren't as relevant, and Dark Soul. But regardless, even if SE is a tiny bit better still, I'm going to stick with Haunt for this testing. This is like the general build you're playing, with the thought process being around, instead of like rapturing all your shards away every minute, you're trying to maintain Malefic Wrath, dumping Shadow Bolts in that window instead. Brace yourselves. Brace yourselves for the damage loss here, boys, okay? Just know that there's still time for tuning and other things to happen. 1, 2, 3 raptures here, start bolting. There's a proc there. The burst is actually not bad. Like, you'll still get a decent bit of burst with the spec, but the big thing is the consistency, or I guess you can say lack thereof, outside of these windows. When you don't have your CDs up, whenever you're not like having these big raptors, these big bolts, whatever, your damage drops off significantly. It's a lot tougher to maintain that same damage threshold you did. And Nightfall is still effective, it's still relevant, but you're still playing a mini game instead of a mini game, trying to maintain Malefic Wrath the entire time. We're like 20-ish seconds off of our Soul Rod here, but things are gonna start to fall pretty quickly. Our damage is gonna drop off substantially. We were sitting at, I believe, less than like 5k when we tried to go back into our Dark Lair, like our second Dark Lair in testing earlier. You can see it dropping pretty substantially here, and we're still 5-ish seconds off of our Soul Rot. Our refresh rapture here, this is gonna fall. I need to refresh. Bang bang, we can go, and this is like the big Shadow Bolt dump window in a sense. You want a rapture to refresh, 6 dots up. This is where you start getting some Shadow Bolt value, but it's hitting nowhere near as hard as it used to. It just crit for 6k. It's nowhere near what it used to be. The damage has been hit significantly. We're dropping below 6k right now, which that was like unheard of with the previous build. And this is coming out of a Soul Rot PS window. We've got 40 seconds left until our next PS Soul Rot window with our Dark Lair. Might even lose this here. Quick catch. Got it. And that's the thing. I'm standing still. The micromanagement of this build is so annoying. When it comes to a lot of fights this here, like Garrosh fight, Painsmith, Ner'zhul, it's just hard to maintain this kind of effect over and over and over. Once again, we're at 5.5k, boys. This is not where we were before. Look at our buffs. We've got everything on. Rune, food, flask, whatever you want. We've got it. We're dropping off a pretty substantial bit. We might even drop below 5k before our Dark Lair comes back around. But I want to make it to our Dark Lair to show you guys the damage breakdown. Let's start refreshing here a little bit. A little early, pop my Ruby, it's fine, whatever. PS, we'll pop this. I have to actually Dark Lair now. Try and catch this here. And we launch. We're at like 5.1k there, boys. 5.1k. Like, we'll gain some value here, but this is nowhere near what the build was before. We were sustaining 6.3, 6.4k on our own. It's nowhere near it. One final rapture for the road. Let's let these dots fall so we can just see, have a decent, like, get a decent, I guess, feel for how it is. Boys, we're at 5.6k right now. Damage breakdown. Shadow Bolts drop significantly. It's still a decent portion of our damage, but remember how it was like 35% and like 28%, and Rapture was somewhere around like here, and like this was like Shadow Bolt and this was Rapture? The damage has dropped off significantly. So number one, with the Nerfed Withering Bolt, this means that Malefic Wrath is not as good as it was before because of this, the damage stacking, all that kind of stuff. Number two, we ran tests with Synergy, not playing this build, because like it's not Withering Bolt that's changed Affliction and made it unenjoyable. It's just Malefic Wrath. Number one, with its short duration, and number two, just the micromanagement game inside of a game, inside of a game, inside of a game. That kind of playstyle to me is never fun, never very exciting. Even when back in BFA, when EP, Explosive Potential, what was in effect, it was really powerful, but it was still a bit annoying. These short duration maintenance buffs, they're not very fun. And when you have to micromanage it to actual T, juggling 6 dots, weaving in Shadow Bolts, it's just not very fun. So if you didn't like the spec before or the build, good news, it's been nerfed. Bad news, AF is just not very good in single target right now. It's not as good as Destro in 2 target. It might be a little better in council based fights, but what fight is council this tier? None. Zero. There are 0 council fights this tier. So AF's in a very awkward spot. We're gonna have to wait and see, but I don't really think Malefic Wrath has to play anymore. It's probably synergy back to being the way that it was if you're just playing a more general build. But the good thing about that is that synergy builds don't have to maintain this stupid buff. You can just synergy and rapture every minute. The bad thing, like I said, that was that AF has been nerfed pretty substantially. We lost a lot of damage today and over the past week or two with all these nerfs to Withering Bolt. Keep in mind, Rapture's been nerfed. We do have Dark Lair as a baseline 2-minute cooldown, but we had to trade Shadow's Embrace for that. And as much as everybody hates Shadow's Embrace, I understand, I agree. This being baseline versus Dark Caller being baseline, this is a much better effect to have baseline. Because Dark Caller, well, as you can see, our Dark Lair doesn't do much damage. And this is with it being a 2-minute cooldown and also being affected by Haunt now. So we're going to have to see where AF goes, where it ends up landing. There is raid testing this Thursday and Friday. We're going to test it there. This is also 3 potency AF, by the way. Yeah, so I don't think AF will end up being this way when this patch goes live in a couple months, whenever it happens. I think we're going to see some more changes to AF. The question is, what are they going to do? Because they've already buffed Dots a bit. They nerfed Rapture. They gave us an OP conduit. Nerfed it. Malefic Wrath was buffed in 9.0.5. Now it's not very good anymore. I don't really know what they're going to do with AF. But, well, you know, I guess we got to wait and see. At this point, though, it's not the best at anything. Not the best single target. Not the best 2 target. I guess maybe the best council, but once again, who cares? There's 0 council fights this tier. AF is probably going to get a few more changes, but this nerf is pretty substantial in a lot of ways. Shifting gears a bit here, though. Affliction might have gotten nerfed. Might suck. But Destro. Shadowburn. Shadowburn got buffed. Got buffed substantially as well. You're looking at roughly a 20, I think it's like a 22% spell power, like buff raw damage increase to Shadowburn. And the bigger thing here, they added the reset cooldown clause to Shadowburn again. I forgot this was not even a thing because I hadn't played with Shadowburn in a while. I remember saying at the start of Shadowlands, why is it not a thing? Why is it gone? Why is this not a thing? This is Shadowburn. This is Shadowburn. The reset clause should be there, and then never played it again. They added the clause back and also buffed the damage. So number one, my question was, in pure single target, how does Shadowburn sim? Because you're playing Shadowburn, but you're comparing it to Reverse Entropy, which is a pretty good effect. A 15% haste proc with about a 25 to 30% uptime over the course of a patchwork fight is pretty solid. Here are sims. These are sims on retail right now. Reverse Entropy versus Shadowburn. You're looking at about a, well, what? 344 DPS difference, give or take here a little bit. This is a sim that I ran for PTR before the nightly build went in. So this is before the Shadowburn changes went in, okay? You're looking at about a 417 DPS difference favoring Reverse Entropy. This sim right here was run after the changes went in. So about half an hour ago, give or take. About a 279 DPS difference, still favoring Reverse Entropy. And if you look at the actual HTML report here, it is casting Shadowburn essentially on CD. You can compare the difference here in Shadowburn. This is like the post nightly build when the buff is in. Shadowburn damage, an average of 7,157. If you go to this sim here and look at the Shadowburn damage, you'll see the average Shadowburn damage here is like 5,000, I think, 5818, give or take. And the Chaos Bolt damage, similar, 15k. It's the Shadowburn damage. I'll have a link to these sims in the video's description as well if you want to look at them. So single target wise, this is not a DPS increase, but I didn't totally expect it to be. It's cool nonetheless to see Shadowburn getting some value again. But the really awesome thing about Shadowburn having this cooldown clause baked into it once again, dude, Havoc, Shard, sniping. Just Havoc Shadowburn play could be back. I mean, there's no could. It is back, right? So let's say theoretically on a boss like Kel'Thuzad in this upcoming tier, where you have a lot of ads you have to control. Kel'Thuzad is essentially there the entire time. If you're outside the phylactery, he's there the entire time. And there are tank ads that spawn early on. You can Havoc the boss, Havoc the tank ads, launch a bolt or two, Shadowburn one. So you get the double chaos bolt value and you get the actual shadow burn value on the boss. It's it's like double dipping in a sense, because it'll copy the shadow burn onto the boss just like the ad, but if the ad dies from the shadow burn, you get the shard back while still duplicating the damage. So number one, shadow burn, havoc synergy there. Number two, it's just a good way to dump shards at the end of a havoc window if need be. There's so many times I want to like go 4 bolts, but I have like 3 bolts I have to incinerate at the end, or I lose that last bolt being havoc because the havoc ends. Launch the 3 bolts and then shadow burn and then incinerate. It's so much better. Like for example, let's say this is like a Kalamazi kind of mob. This is a boss mob here, and this ad spawns. So get the ad a little lower, give or take. All right, boss is up. Cool. All right, you want to kill this ad? Havoc the boss. Shadow burn. Watch damage here. Replication. Both die. That dies. Shard back. There's the boss. You get the shadow burn effect here. You get the havoc extra spells. It's super strong. This is what havoc shadow burn play used to be before they removed the claws and also made it a talent. But I'm really excited to see its ability coming back. There are fights this tier, like, let me see, like Kalamazi. I would assume Sylvanas. Eye of the Jailer, potentially. Painsmith, maybe. But KT is one of the big fights this tier where Shadowburn might see play. Explosive weeks in Mythic Plus. Dude, explosive orbs. They have like 2 health. Shadowburn them. Get your shard back. Even storming or spiteful weeks, whatever you call them. There's a lot of potential for this new Shadowburn change. The damage buff is nice, but the extra shard clause, or I guess the shard return clause, is really nice. The long-term goal here is to get Shadowburn back baseline. Probably not going to happen, but it's a really nice change. And like I said, depending on certain fights this tier, Shadowburn could legitimately see play. And that's awesome, because in this row we haven't seen variants since internal combustion, and this ability is one of the worst feeling ones in the game. Shadowburn buff, awesome, legit, solid. Love the havoc play. Hopefully we get to play with it a little bit this upcoming tier. Thanks for watching, boys. I hope this video helped clarify just the changes to legendaries, Destro buffs, AF nerfs, and I guess any other questions that you might have had today. Once again, Knife A legendary actually landed probably on like the higher end, it landed in a pretty decent spot. I feel having that mini PI / crit bonus every minute with your soul rot's going to be really strong for Demo, for Destro, for AF, if it ends up being the playable legendary in those settings. AF unfortunately got nerfed. Not much to say there. I don't really see a light at the end of the tunnel. I assume it's gonna be buffed some way, somewhere in a future build, but I don't really know what they're going to do with it now. They've nerfed Rapture, they've moved talents around, they nerfed the Conduit, so AF is almost back to being where it was pre-Rapture nerf. It's not incredibly good, but I guess the one positive is that the Malefic Grasp, or Malefic Wrath, I'm sorry, playstyle is no longer a thing. Thank God. Shadowburn changes, Destro, solid, awesome. I'm a big fan. But I guess we'll see where that goes as well, because Entropy is also a pretty strong ability. Let me know what you guys think of the legendaries, the Destro buffs, the AF nerfs, and everything else in the comment section below. Any questions, also feel free to drop them down there. I will be sure to get back to you. Any weak auras or profiles you can grab for free off my Twitch if you want to swing by. And once again, if you would like early access to the 9.1 Sanctum Domination Warlock spreadsheet, the tier 3 Felgar rank from a Patreon or higher does indeed get early access to that. Thank you so much for watching, guys. If you want to see more content to help support the channel, be sure to smash the subscribe button below. I will catch you all again soon on stream. Peace.